Hey everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we have Joseph Selbie, and he is going to be talking about his book, The Physics of God. So welcome, Joseph.
Thanks for having me on your show.
So tell me about, I know that you've had a long time passion for the intersection of religion and science. Tell me when that began and what the fascination was.
Well, I think, like many people, one of the first books that really kind of fired my imagination on it was The Tao of Physics by Joseph Chopra.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if memory serves, it came out in the late 70s.
Mm.
So before that, I had a pretty good grounding in science, although I didn't have a degree in science or practice as a scientist, but have followed it as a layman for decades.
Mm-hmm. And what was the interest in following it? What were you looking for that when you read the Tao of Science what did it ignite within you?
Well, by that time, I was a meditator, had been meditating at that point for almost 10 years and have continued that since. And so along with meditation goes a deep interest in, what is the nature of reality? What is divinity? What is your soul? What is this reality that surrounds us? What does it mean when it's said that it's an illusion?
Mm.
And what does it mean that it was created according to religion or not created according to some scientific outlooks? So matching that passion for meditation and deepening my own personal experience of the divine with this essentially and intrinsically outward science of religion. Where does that outward observation, outward experimentation, outward discovery support that inner experience and support the experiences of the people who have had deep transcendent experiences, like saints, sages, near-death experiencers who speak of it. So the book came together. I'd actually been wanting to write it for about 20 years.
Wow.
It finally came together and came out last fall. But it's really a concise, well, as I like to think of it, connecting of all the dots between the sort of perennial claims of religion for life after death, for miracles, for the heavens, for God, for personal transcendence, with the various disciplines of science that support it, like quantum physics, quantum biology, neuroscience, etc. And I really found a tremendous amount of support in science for those descriptions of the people who had the actual transcendent awareness. It's very difficult to get science and religion to align if you only go with the dogmas that surround religion. And the dogmas are created by well-meaning, intellectual theologians.
Okay, so let's actually go and dive into some of these things. So let's go from what I'd like to do is go from the top all the way down and then back
Sure.
up. Okay, so
Okay.
let's start off at the very the what is God, what is heaven. Let's go down there and then let's just start moving down to who are we individually, who is our soul. So let's start off with the big
The big one.
person, the big one, big person, woman, female, entity, God. What does science say about what is God?
Well, scientific discovery and what science has to say are two different things. I want to just make that clear. Science doesn't have an opinion on anything. Science is just a method of making discoveries.
Okay.
Very good method, very exact, very precise, methodical. But the opinions about what it means are held by all of us, really, by scientists, but also by lay people like ourselves. So some scientists would say that there is absolutely no evidence to support the notion of there being any kind of divine being, divine consciousness at all.
Mm-hmm.
But they actually form a minority of scientists.
Hmm.
It's less known that only about 41% of scientists feel that they should be atheists based on the evidence of science. But there's another tiny majority of scientists who believe in infinite intelligence, infinite consciousness, some kind of divine.
You mean the 60%? Is that because you said 40% are atheists? Does that mean 60% believe that there is
It's just a
something?
little bit more than 50%. It's like 51%, according to a Pew survey.
Okay, 51% of
I
the
don't know
scientists say there's
exactly
something.
what that remaining 8 people in the middle
Right.
believe. But at any rate, so given the fact that science itself doesn't have any monopoly on that opinion, there is a body of speculative theories by very prominent physicists and scientists, including Einstein, lesser known physicists like John Archibald Wheeler, Eugene Wigner, John von Neumann. For people who are really into physics, they will recognize those names as big names in the field. They all felt that given the discoveries of science, there had to be consciousness. There had to be an infinite consciousness that was really the ground, the source of all reality. Now, they couldn't put the discoveries in mathematics together to prove that, but many of them felt that what had been discovered and what they knew pointed inexorably at a greater consciousness.
So what specifically did they know that pointed towards that there had to be a greater consciousness?
Well, one of the most intriguing discoveries in quantum physics is what's called the intelligent observer effect.
Mm-hmm.
And this boils down to the statement that matter doesn't come into objective existence unless there's an observer to observe it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how that can be is speculated on in physics to this day, but the experiments that led them to this conclusion are not speculated on. It's over and over and over, it's proved that if there's no observer, there's no matter. So this is a pretty profound discovery that would go against the notion that matter and energy are all there is, and they're always there, they're always present, and that we have nothing to do with their formation, our consciousness.
So there has to be something, there's something that affects matter and energy, and they're connected in some way. What the connection is, unclear, but the energy, the matter is not recognized or not observed unless there's someone observing it.
Or another way to put it is that everything there is that we think of as the reality we see through the senses remains in an energy state until it's observed, and then it kind of pops in to a matter state. So there's something called wave-particle duality. Mm-hmm. Everything can exist as a wave, and everything can exist as a particle. And that includes from the tiniest atoms to the biggest stars. Mm-hmm. The same truth holds true. So what the observer effect says is that until you have an observer, it remains in this kind of state of energetic potential. And then when it's observed, it takes on actual matter form.
Okay, so what does that mean about the reality that I see just at this moment? So I see you, we're digitally communicating, right? I see flowers, I see a picture of Yogananda. Like, what does that mean about the reality that I actually see, feel, and witness right now, if in fact I'm affecting the energy and the particles and all of that?
Well, one way to look at it is that we all are wearing virtual reality gear.
Okay.
And that virtual reality gear is our senses and our nervous system. So when we're asleep, this reality goes away. When we wake and we start looking through our senses, looking through our eyes and perceiving through our senses, then this reality takes form instantaneously, seamlessly. So there's no sense of, wait a minute, did I just see a flicker in reality? It's 100% seamless. But when the saints and sages, through the meditation practices, or even near-death experiencers through the traumatic deaths that they go through, when they stop perceiving through the senses, they perceive other realities, luminous realities. They perceive heavens, they perceive angels. And as soon as their consciousness returns to their physical body and they start perceiving through the senses again, then this reality that we're so familiar with pops back into their awareness.
So that would lead one to believe that there are other realities beyond the way things that we can actually physically sense. Because how else would explain that these sages would go into like a deep trance or meditative state, enter into a different reality? So there are different realities beyond which we can touch, feel, and sense.
Exactly.
So
And
what does
so
that say
that's
about?
kind of the answer to your second question, which
Okay.
was heavens.
Okay.
So the heavens are a perennial promise of all religions, that after death there are heavenly realms, except for those who don't behave so well, and then there are less heavenly realms. But in either case, they are non-material realms, but that we immediately go to them when we die. So when we die, we permanently take off our virtual reality gear and we become aware of the reality that has always been there. So when you're wearing reality gear in the real thing and you take that headset off, you're seeing what has always been there, right? Was there all the while you were seeing some other fantasy reality created by the VR equipment. But as soon as you take it off, you're in this reality again. So the same thing happens when we die. As soon as we take off this bio gear, then we perceive the heavens. And we perceive the part of the heavens, which according to many of the saints and sages are vast. We find ourselves in the part of heaven that we vibrate with, that is on our wavelength. This is both literally our energetic wavelength, but it's also our emotional, our mental wavelength, determines where we end up in the heavens. But they're always there.
So why do you think we were designed in a way such that our VR, as you describe it, does not enable us to see all these multiple dimensions here right when we're here on Earth? Why is it that I just see you and I see the picture and the flowers and you and your blue shirt and jacket? Why am I just limited? You know, there's probably behind you are other gods, entities, and things that I just can't see. Why do you think that I was designed this way?
Well,
we were designed this way. I assume everyone is designed this way.
That is perhaps a bigger question than the one you started with, was what is the nature of God as infinite consciousness? And people have been asking this question for as long as there's any record of people asking questions, which is why did God create us? And why did God put us in this reality? The answer I like, and there are many other answers, is that it's a school, that we're learning to master our equipment. We're learning to master our will, our life force, our attention, to be able to transcend this seeming reality at will. And that it's a long school. We reincarnate to keep learning lessons we haven't already learned.
Right.
So I like that answer. Not everybody likes that answer, but to me, it's the one that fits the best.
Right.
It allows me to think, well, what I'm doing may not have any lasting value to humanity, or may not be the perfect way to live my life, or for anyone to live their life, let alone me. But I'm learning, I'm gaining with every aspect of what I do, of my striving, of my meditation, of my relationships. Everything is an opportunity to improve.
Okay, so here I am as an individual soul, and I like your story. In fact, if I were to believe in any story, and as you said, because there is no answer, definitive answer, it's really choosing a story that makes you feel most comforted. Let's say that I'm here in this school of earth, trying to learn and master some of these truths that are spiritual truths. And you had said earlier that you were thinking about soul and spirit and those kinds of things. So what is my soul and what is my spirit, and how are they interconnected?
Well, to give you any kind of answer there, I can't draw too much on the discoveries of science. But what the saints and sages tell us in various ways, various words from various eras and cultures, is that we are indivisibly a part of the infinite intelligent consciousness that is God. Even now. It's not that we have to earn that. It's not like we have to really, in a sense, learn it. We have to just become aware of it. The art of spiritual growth is in many ways one of relaxing into a reality that's already there. You're not having to, with a supreme effort of will, become this divine being. You just have to relax into the fact that you already are. And with that, withdraw your awareness, in a sense, relax away from the senses and relax away from attachments and emotional conflicts within yourself. And when you find yourself in deep states or deeper states, for anyone, the yogis in India call that experience smriti, which means memory. So you have this feeling like, oh, of course, this is what I am. This is what I always have been.
It's like I've had amnesia. Smriti.
Exactly.
It's called smriti. Smriti. So the smriti is like, wait a second. I've always been this. I just kind of forgot. And it seems like we forget a lot.
We do.
We're in smriti. Oh, we're in a non-smriti state, I think. At least I can say I am a non-smriti state the vast majority of times, unless I'm meditating. So when we're in smriti, we realize that is that our spirit? It's when we recognize that we are the divine. The divine is within us. We've never been separate from the divine. It's always been within us. Is that
exactly.
smriti? Okay, got it.
Well, smriti just literally means memory. And so
okay.
the experience is one of remembering.
Okay. So there's a point in which, meditation, or ideally when you are in a more elevated, enlightened state, you're in this place of just remembering all the time. And is that where spirit is then? It's the remembering, I am part of this divine consciousness. Divine consciousness has always been in me. I don't have to seek it. I don't have to go to church. I don't have to do anything but remember. So I'm trying to figure out the practices that help me remember.
Right. And the first key is awareness, is just becoming more more aware. And again, that keys back to relaxing.
Yeah, surrendering. All the other stuff that. So,
Yeah.
what is the soul? All the stuff that we're trying to relax. Like there's ego, and then there's the soul. How do you see those two things connected?
Well, Yogananda described the soul as individualized spirit.
Hmm. Mm.
And then he defined ego as the soul identified with the body.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So
I like
the
that.
the lesson that we keep having to try to learn is to become less and less identified with our body, thinking our body is us. It's
Hmm.
very easy to think our body is us. When it gets hurt, it hurts, and when we bump into things, we feel it. It's natural for us to feel like this body is us, and that's the delusion. That's the challenge to overcome, and that's why meditation again is so key. Is because you can experience things that are not the body. If you don't meditate, it's very hard to experience anything that isn't the body. But when you
Mm.
do meditate, you start having these experiences where you realize that had nothing to do
Right.
with this physical form. There's something else within me. There's something else I can discover in that relaxation that is so much more peaceful, so much more creative, so much more loving and joyful than when I'm in this more attached mode,
Mm. So
worrying about the body, etc.
So I'm getting some ahas emerging. Let me see if I can tease them out. So if God or Shiva or whomever you think is out there created each of us, we're individualized manifestations of divine consciousness, and our soul, as I understand it, is like the individualized specific form that God is taking in this individualized person, CJ. Joseph, right? So that's our soul. But there's divinity within that soul. Our ego is a part of us that's like, no, but CJ has a body. I need to protect myself. I have like my survival instincts. I have to beat Joseph in this, I'm not going to beat you, beat this other person in a race. I need to win the race. I need to be the top dog in my company, all those kinds of things, because you believe that this body and is the only thing that really exists. So you forget you have a memory loss, a smriti, an anti-smriti moment, and you forget that the divine is within you. And so that's why when we're meditating, we're trying to let go of ego, let go of the part of the CJ, my soul, the part that's layered on top of my soul that says CJ has to do this, and this on her action item list, or else she's not a good person, or CJ has to do this, or this, or she will not be safe. Those are the things that I'm kind of surrendering, those kinds of things. Is
Right.
that right?
Yeah, I think that's right. But I really encourage people to think about that process not as anything that you're giving up, where you're giving up the ego, or having to lay down a burden that you kind of want to keep carrying.
Right.
I think it's much more easy for people to think of it as embracing something more.
Ah,
And
okay,
when
got it.
you and when you embrace something more, you're not losing anything, you're only gaining. And in the process, the hold of this uh, delusion that you are separate from everything begins to just break down naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize that, a common delusion is that, I need to be loved. If other people don't love me, then I have no love.
Right.
But when you have these deeper experiences in meditation where you just feel love and you just realize you already are that love,
Mm-hmm.
then the ego's need to be loved diminishes with all of that sort of codependence and odd behavior that can come out of, coercively trying to get people to love you.
Mm-hmm.
that can go away and you can just love people.
Mm,
And when you love people, you know you're not losing anything. You're not
hmm.
giving away and not getting anything back. You
Right.
just know from your own direct experience that you are love, and when you give love, you feel it more.
Hmm.
But
Right.
until it's real experience, what I'm saying are just words.
Right. So the so here's what I'm envisioning, and I have another question that's I think related to that. So, there's a CJ who like knows not to cross in front of a truck while it's in front of her. That is my ego. I do not want to lose or surrender that piece, right?
Uh,
Because well, unless I want to die, and I realize I'm not, this body doesn't mean anything anyways, and if I want to go that path, but if I would like to continue playing on this plane of reality and learning my lessons, and I need to not cross the streets when I see the truck. So I'm not going, my ego will still be there to help me on those things that I need to survive if I choose to stay on this plane of reality. However, it's about expanding into more. There's more than just that. There's more. There's a whole bunch of different things that I could experience that somehow I forgot. But I just need to go through meditate, or when I meditate and go through loosening up some of those other things that are binding me to this body, then I can kind of get to a different experience. Is that another way
yeah,
of saying what you said?
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so here's the question that I have then. So there's so many different ways of meditating, right? There's meditating where you just breathe and you're focusing on the breath. There's meditating where you're watching your mind and where it's going. There's meditating where you pray to the archangels and you try to manifest a certain kind of reality, because if if in fact we are just whatever, based on the observer principle, if whatever we observe, we can actually control reality. I can manifest the Mercedes Benz in front of my yard if I just keep on visualizing it. So there are all these different different types of meditations. um, how do you view all those different sorts of meditations as a pathway to the divine? um, how do you segment and think, how do you segment all the different types of spiritual stuff that's out there, and how would you describe how each of those are a valid path towards the divine?
Well, my favorite analogy for that is that there are lots of instruments in an orchestra, but every instrument has the purpose of playing the same harmonious music as all the others. Not exactly the same notes, but to enter that same harmony to create this beautiful experience that we have when we hear symphonic music. So no one in the orchestra, although there may be some, but I doubt if very many people in the orchestra would say, well, I'm a violinist, and violinists are obviously the best instrument that you
Right.
can play. And you people playing basses or trumpets, et cetera, are second class. There's no rivalry because they all understand that every instrument is needed to create the symphony. So I look at all the different forms of meditation and all the different forms of concentration techniques, all the different forms of devotional techniques that get the heart involved, like meditating on the archangels and other practices. They're all just different instruments, and we're all drawn to different instruments to play. I mean, who can say why the person did pick up the violin? It just
Right.
appealed to them.
Right.
It was what they liked. And so the key, though, is just in the same sense that all instruments make a sound and that sound can harmonize with all the other sounds, there is a commonality with all these practices, which is that they all will lead you to greater and greater stillness and greater inward focus.
Hmm. All right, so I'm going to go into one of the practices of yogananda, which I assume is yoga, right? Yoga and meditation. I don't know enough about yogananda to really say anything about yogananda, but was yoga part of a practice, a meditation practice to get to that place of stillness?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
The yoga, I'm assuming when you say yoga that you're referring to yoga postures.
I think
Yes.
it's
So
like it's pranayama, it's yoga, nidra, all those different
yes,
types
the
of
whole
things.
suite of
Yeah,
practices.
sweet, a
Yes.
whole symphony of,
Yeah.
of methodologies to get to be one with the divine. And so, as I understand it, we have this energy at the base of our spine. Some call it Shakti. And so we each have, and where is that, where does Shakti fit within the constructs? Is that our soul or individualized point of light? What is Shakti according to Yogananda? And why is it important to activate, or is it important in his model?
Um, well, what you're speaking to is a system of understanding how the human body and the soul work together
Okay.
that's been around in India for millennia. And Yogananda's way of describing it was that identification with the body that I was talking about earlier, that is really kind of the impulsive ego to think of itself only as the body,
Mm-hmm.
really manifests when energy enters the subtle spine,
Mm-hmm.
which is where the chakras are.
Mm-hmm.
And below the lowermost chakra, there's said to be this Shakti,
Mm-hmm.
this Kundalini energy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of that as the farthest reach of the soul from its true nature, it's like the very furthest pole from having a deep meditational experience where you're unaware of the physical body,
Right.
as opposed to having an intense awareness of the physical body. So it's no accident that energy at the bottom of the spine is involved when we have sex, because when we have sex, we are the most bodily aware we generally ever are.
Mm-hmm.
The only exception to that is when we're threatened physically. We become super aware of the physical body, and that is the root chakra that we're experiencing. So you have the root chakra, you have the reproductive chakra, and all of these chakras in this subtle spine will be gateways for that Shakti energy to flow into physical manifestation.
Okay.
When we meditate, when we do yoga postures, when we do pranayama especially, we're trying to withdraw that energy from the physical nerves and bring it back into the chakras.
Okay.
When we're in deep meditation, we are almost entirely aware of the chakras and unaware of the physical body.
Okay, got it. So like I'm there doing Warrior One and Warrior Three or whatever, and whatever I'm doing all these things, and it's all about taking the energy that has gone outward and bringing it back into the center. Is that when we're doing yoga poses? That's the intention. It's not like I'm healthy and I can stretch more and I'm relaxed
Well,
now. It could
it
be
does have that benefit. It
right.
does have that benefit. But I think the biggest thing that anybody who's tried to meditate, even a little, will find initially, and it's still a challenge for me 45 years later, to be completely relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it's a challenge is that we get knots of tension. So you've got muscles that neither want to relax nor can they fully tense. They're just kind of in this.
Is that different than a granti, which is like is it a physical manifestation of a knot of energy? Is that the same thing?
No, but it could cause a grunting.
Okay.
So it's more the subtle energy is caught up in the muscles
Okay.
and is not being able to be released and flow back into the chakras. So the yoga postures are great. They were designed. They were created not so much for their physical health benefits, although
Right.
that is a very important thing, but they were designed to help you relax so you could meditate more completely.
So you can pull out your energy away from the pain in your shoulder and the tightness, and you can pull all that energy back, get the energy flow back into the center. And so
Right.
once you move out of the body and the concentration of, your body, you're doing, all these meditation moves, or sorry, the yoga moves, then it's about just tuning on the inside to, you told me the second part, but I can't remember what you said.
Well, then you have, as you mentioned, pranayama. And pranayama is um, pranayama is a state where you're controlling your life force. But generally, when we say pranayama, we're referring to pranayama techniques that we use that almost always involve the breath. And you use the breath in a very focused and directed way, which even more strongly than releasing the tension does when you do yoga postures, it draws the energy into the subtle spine. It draws it back into the chakras. And with certain kinds of pranayama techniques, you can enjoy a period of breathlessness after you practice it. It might be only moments, might be where ordinarily you would take 2 breaths, you only take 1. Or where ordinarily you would take 1 long, slow breath. This one lasts between breaths for minutes. The yoga masters can stay in that state indefinitely. And when you go beyond your breathing, the heart rate slows down also. So the great masters, the yoga masters and the great saints and sages develop the ability to become not only breathless, but without heartbeat. And that's really the key to getting rid of the VR equipment.
I see.
It's the total removal of the VR equipment. And when you're in that state, you have these blissful, transcendent experiences of divine realms. And that's when you recognize, one of the things you had asked me earlier was about how science makes a connection to this experience. And I used VR as an example. There is another connection, which is much more speculative. And that is that the world, the universe, is considered by some theories in quantum physics, in string theory in particular, to be a holographic projection. You've probably heard of this. And that the hologram from which the holographic projection arises is in this subtle energy realm that is where the heavens are. It is the heavens. On an individual level, our own physical body is also a holographic projection. And the hologram is in our subtle body. The hologram is our subtle body.
I see. So, and it's there have been times when I've gotten to a very, very deep place of meditation. I was looking at my husband and I literally saw like this, it's almost like an outline, as if, when you blow bubbles out of when you're a little kid, you blow bubbles. It was like this rainbow colored outline of a body, but it wasn't exactly his body. It was a different shape and a body. And it did feel like a hologram of some sort. It wasn't him, but it was some image of him energetically that wasn't him in the physical body. Is that what you mean? So you're trying to find your own version of that your holographic, when you're doing this, breathing and having the energy, and is the energy, why the focus on the energy moving upward and around in a circle? Why? Because part of what I'm hearing you say is that in some ways it's about keeping to the point where you're not even breathing, or there's an inaudible breath, and your heart has stopped, so that you are pure consciousness. The body does not even, it barely exists, is what I'm hearing you say, is the
Right.
goal of that stillness and surrender. What's the energy's role in this whole model?
Well, your subtle body is pouring that energy into the physical body because that's our choice. We are wanting to be in the physical body.
Right.
Now, maybe not wisely, but we're wanting to be in the physical
Right.
body.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's comfortable, it's familiar, it's the way we've lived our life all this lifetime. And so, obligingly, the subtle body, the hologram, is projecting this physical body for us. And it's doing it through these sort of projection nodes of the chakras
Oh.
and causing us to manifest. So when we do any of these practices, meditation, pranayama, etc., and we start to withdraw that energy gradually from the physical body and pull it back into the subtle body, then we immediately, automatically have a more harmonious experience because that's the real us.
Okay, so the energy has to come in so that we can feel the life energy inside of us, to feel the real us. If we're
Exactly.
not, if we can't feel the Shakti or the energy or the life force, then we're just an empty, well, why is energy critical? Why can't we just withdraw all of our senses and be done with it? Why does life and energy have to be felt so extremely or at all? Why do the chakras and this shushumna and this pipe, why does it even matter?
Um, well, I can't say why, but one way you can think about it is that um, the energy is required to animate the physical body.
Okay. Okay.
So when we move, when we talk, when we speak, when we digest, when we metabolize, everything requires energetic interaction
Mm-hmm.
with the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
So without that energy, we just keel over.
Right.
The body just drops dead.
Right. Well, we're no longer a soul. But there's no archetype because there's no energy within us.
Well, we're still the soul.
Right.
We just stop being aware of the body
Right. Okay.
because
Fair
we've
enough.
withdrawn our energy from it. And we stop being aware of this realm, this physical realm in which this physical body exists.
Mm.
But we immediately become part of that subtle energy. We immediately become aware of, not part of, we're already a part of it. We immediately become aware of that subtle body with all its subtle energy. And we realize that it's much bigger than our physical body, that it's connected to everything. We don't feel like there's only this small identity that is us. We naturally feel peace in it. We naturally feel love in it. We naturally feel joy in it. That's the best of us because that is the soul still manifesting some degree of form,
Mm-hmm.
but a form that is without the negative limitations of the physical body.
Got it. Okay.
So
Got it.
when you were seeing your husband's energy, you were seeing the real husband.
Right.
You were seeing the hologram behind the holographic projection.
Yeah, and it's interesting because at that moment I was like, "Oh my God, you're just beautiful." Like there's just, well, he is beautiful. The physical manifestation of my husband is beautiful.
Yeah.
Not like he's pretty, but he's just a beautiful person. But the holographic was just like, oh my, it was just mind blowing to just see this beautiful, luminous, wonderful,
Yeah.
and it was just beautiful to see. And there was times when I sort of had that vision of myself. It was harder to see because it's yourself, but it was also it was hard to see that, see the beauty. But it was all, I think all those energetics projections, those holographs are just beautiful. So I want to go back to the chakras, because it seems to me that, there's so many things that we see on this plane of reality that are mirroring all these systems that we're talking about. There's, mechanical engineering and like thermodynamics talking about energy and moving those things up, and wheels. I mean, it seems like there's a analogy between thermodynamics and the movement of energy and these wheels, right? And the wheels, as I understand them, are kind of small, bigger, and then they go small, they go smaller. So there's something with that. There's also networking theory where it's like one is communicating to the other. Have you ever looked at mapping these things that are in, engineering and computer science, and mapping it to some of the systems that we have inside our bodies?
Well, there is a degree of mapping you can do. A lot of the examples you were mentioning do hint at the operation of subtle energy. But mostly you have to get beyond the laws that govern physical systems altogether to really find the map to the soul, to the subtle body, to consciousness. And those discoveries do exist. A lot of what we refer to, or has become commonplace to refer to as quantum weirdness, is really all about why things behave in a way that isn't mechanical, that isn't obeying the seeming normal common sense laws of physical reality, and they're behaving like entanglement and wave particle duality and the intelligent observer paradox. They all make sense in the context of understanding that this physical reality is sustained by and formed by the subtle hologram heaven-like realm that is beyond the physical. As soon as you can accept that and say, oh, there is this whole other reality, then those issues of entanglement resolve themselves. For just the example of entanglement, entanglement is considered to be quantum weirdness because two particles that are entangled can be traveling away from each other at the speed of light. And then when one is observed and becomes matter, behaves like matter, the other particle will take the opposite properties. Entangled particles are always like opposite twins rather than identical twins. If this has a certain spin, the other will have an opposite spin. If this is positive, this is negative. And no matter how far apart these entangled particles are, the instant one is observed, the other will take on the opposite particles. Now, this seemingly defies the speed of light. It seemingly is saying that the information from one that says, okay, I'm plus, is instantaneously sent to the other to say I'm minus. And so entanglement is often thought to be impossible from a certain point of view because it defies the speed of light, which is assumed to be constant. But if you add this other dimension, if you add this pure energy realm in which the heavens exist and in which our subtle bodies exist, and think of entanglement as two particles in their wave form, when one is observed, it might be observed and appear on one side of the galaxy, and the other one is observed on the other side of the galaxy, and they become particles. But the moment before they were observed, they were in a spaceless realm. In other words, they were next to each other. They were one with each other. they were not, there was no distance. There is no distance as we know it. There is no third dimension as we understand it in the heavens.
Hmm. So this explains this whole idea of multiple realities. So there's a different CJ running around with, if I'm the negative or the plus, there's an opposite of me running around in some
Well,
other
not
different dimension.
necessarily. I'm not a big fan of the parallel universe theories.
Okay.
There could be, and there's a lot of testimony from saints and highly advanced beings saying that there are other universes.
Right.
But there aren't other copies of us in those universes. They're just a whole other population of people like ourselves in another universe.
I see.
The notion of us splitting into copies and our copies splitting into copies and copies and copies is part of what's called the many worlds theory. Mm-hmm. And it is the kind of ultimate in meaninglessness coming out of that narrow group of materialists in science.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. So it's they're not the vast majority of these people are believing in mini worlds.
Right. And even though those 41% that I quoted earlier, probably not all of them embrace the many worlds theory. But the many worlds theory is that anything that could possibly happen in any given moment actually does happen. And when it happens, it spawns an entire new universe.
Wow.
It's a very profligate theory.
Oh my gosh, we have to have another show because we're ending this one. Okay, we have to talk about that more because that just blew my mind open. So you're coming to East West Books, and first of all, thank you for being on the show. That was just so fascinating to map, and you're such a beautiful, clear communicator on these very, very complex topics. So thank you so much. It's beautiful. Tell me a little bit about when you're coming to East West Bookstore and what you're going to be talking about when you come.
Well, I'm going to ask people to not give in to old superstitions because I'm going to be there on Friday the 13th.
Okay.
And that's in April.
Okay.
And my talk is really going to weave back into some of the subjects we've already covered here to really help people understand that they do have two bodies. Mm-hmm. We all have two bodies simultaneously. We can't live without the other, although the other body can live without the physical. And to
you mean this energetic body, that astral body?
That energetic body exists even when the physical body dies.
Right.
But were the energetic body to go away for any reason, the physical body would just disappear.
Right.
Can't exist without it. So I'm going to be going into that, and I'll be going into M theory more and quantum science behind that. And then just how that relationship we have with our second body is so important to us and how we can improve our life by being more aware of that subtle energy that we all have all the time, but tend to have our interest, have our awareness overriding our awareness of that.
You mean the expanded body that we were talking about, how it's important to actually recognize that we have this huge other experience that's open to us? Is that what you mean, or something different?
The more we live in awareness of that other body, the happier we are, the healthier we are, the more creative we are, the more loving we are. And that's really what spiritual development is essentially all about, is becoming more and more aware that we are not this body and that we are this wonderful other experience.
So you've been on this journey for 40 plus years. How has your experience changed over time as you have expanded this awareness of this other body?
Well, I wish it had changed a lot more than it has. But I will say without any hesitation that it just gets better and better and better. That the more you are aware of that subtle energy and the more you flow with it, the more you dance with it in everything you do during your day, the happier you are.
You know, it's
calmer
funny.
you are.
Every single person that I've talked to says the same exact thing, but I still ask it anyways because I want to hear that there is no cap. You know, they feel like, oh, I've reached this point. It's amazing. And then, you know, they reach another point and they're like, I didn't even know that this other point was existed. And it's amazing. And it just keeps on getting, it gets
Yes.
better. It seems like that is the thing that I hear uniformly. It's my own personal experience, but I like hearing different people and how they would articulate what the process is for them. So thank you. I look forward to having you here in Seattle, and thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.